Arnold Schwarzenegger vetoed marriage equality in California in 2005, George came out. And when he came out, he said, and this is a marvelous, marvelous quote, George Takei said, "It's not really coming out, which suggests opening a door and stepping through. It's more like a long, long walk through what began as a narrow corridor that starts to widen." And this is, these metaphors and this imagery and this language that George used, as soon as he really came out at that point, George launched his gay rights activism like he was launching into hyperspace. George took an enormous leadership role on Proposition 8 and then subsequently in California and nationally for, you know, gay marriage in particular and gay rights in general. And to have someone like George, who is well known and liked, a likable, nice person who people feel warmly about. He's such an approachable guy, and people feel very good about him. It brings a special dimension. And let me now just do a quick segue before we present the award to George, which is this. Throughout the 20th century, gay people were considered a national security threat until well into the 20th century, especially in the Red Scare period, the McCarthy era, when gay people were persecuted, thousands and thousands were purged of their jobs, people were driven to suicide. It was just how they were a threat to national security. Well, George has taken an issue that has enormous relevance today, because George has been probably the leading activist in this country to remind America that we went through a shocking, shameful period by interring Japanese Americans during all of World War II. There were, I mean, these numbers are so staggering to me. There were 127,000 Japanese Americans living in the continental United States. 120,000 of them were sent to camps and not let out beyond a gate for 4 or 5 years. And that was George and his family when George was a little kid. And he grew up with that experience. George is now, you know, has been for years crusading as an Asian American activist for Asian American equality and recognition and acceptance in the society and not to be an other and so on. And of course, Alan referred to George's marvelous play on Broadway at the Longacre called Allegiance, which everybody in this room will feel tremendous resonance with for lots of reasons. But the point I'm making is, I think George has taught people in this country, thinking people, so that when we get these maniacs calling for spying on Muslim Americans, calling for registering Muslim Americans, calling for closing houses of worship of Muslim Americans, and calling for either the deportation and internment of Muslim Americans. And I'm only talking about the Republican presidential candidates. I mean, it's such a shock. And George's experience and the retelling of that experience resonates so completely and directly with the shock that we're going through to our democracy and our Constitution and our values today. I think George has played this kind of incredible pioneering role on so many levels, and it's my privilege to present to George Takei the Human Rights Award.
So much, and thank you, Alan and Ethan and the whole organization, the Jim Alves Democratic Club, to receive this honor and recognition, because I'm well aware of the history of the individuals as well as the organization itself. I am deeply humbled and greatly honored and indebted to you for this, and also for all that you've been doing to make this day possible. And in accepting this kind of award, I have to share it with my husband, Brad Takei, right? Everything I've done and accomplished over the last 28 years. Brad has been there as the central pillar, and we are a true partnership. So thank you on behalf of Brad as well for this recognition. I'm talking to a group of people that I know the history of, your organization and your activism. And I know how dependent our system is on people like you who take public office. But beyond that, on the simplest level, cast an informed vote. That is at the core of our system. And so many people don't do that. And that makes the importance of what all the rest of us do. And as people who voluntarily serve on public commissions and boards, and particularly to those that take on elective office, it's not only an important job, but it's a powerful job. And the responsibilities are very great. And so I'm grateful to all of you, because when I was a teenager, I had many long after-dinner discussions with my father. As you heard from Ethan, as a child, from the age 5 to 8.5, I spent behind the barbed wires of U.S. internment camps, prison camps for all rights and purposes. I was a child then, and I didn't understand it as much as I understand now. But as a teenager, I tried to get more information on it in history books and other sources. I couldn't find a thing about it. This was back in the 50s. And I read civics books that talked about the shining ideals of our democracy. And I couldn't reconcile that with what I knew to be my childhood. And so I had many discussions with my father. And I learned about American democracy from a man who, in his 30s, lost everything. His business, our home, our freedom. He was devastated. And yet, he was able to explain to his teenage son how precious our democracy is. He said, our democracy is a people's democracy. It really is dependent on the people. And people have the potential for doing great things. But as human beings, we all have our human fallibility. And so our system is vitally dependent on people who cherish the ideals of our democracy, sometimes holding democracy's feet to the fire in order to make the ideals real. And one Sunday afternoon, he took me to downtown Los Angeles, to the campaign headquarters of the Adlai Stevenson for president. And he says we volunteered, but actually he volunteered me. And there I was, working with other passionate people who truly believed in our democratic system. And I heard Adlai Stevenson speak, and I read some of his speeches, and he was inspiring. And it was that experience that made me an active participant, not only in elective political office, but also in social movements. I was inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King, and I became active in the civil rights movement. I did a civil rights musical in Los Angeles. During the Vietnam War, I was involved with the EIPJ, Entertainment Industry for Peace and Justice, together with people like Jane Fonda and Donald Sutherland. And in the 70s, when the movement began to get an apology and redress for our unconstitutional incarceration, I became active in that, and I testified at the Congressional Commission. And so it was the internment and my father's explanation of the responsibility we have in this people's government that made me an activist. However, despite all that campaigning I did on social issues and campaigning for the good candidates, I was silent on the one issue that was closest to me, the fact that I was gay. Because in that climate of the 60s, 70s, I wanted my acting career, and I knew that I would have to give that up if I should come out. And as Ethan said, it was that point where Arnold Schwarzenegger got me so angry, so raging, that I said to Brad, we've got to come out. And I was prepared for my career to wane. I thought I had a good career and I'm ready to enjoy the downhill ride. What happened was the polar opposite. My career blossomed. I had been busy. And so here I am in New York on the Broadway stage 8 times a day, or 8 times a week. I'm not that hard-working.
Playing 2 characters.
Yes, I'm a hard-working double actor. But telling the story that is the mission of my life, the story of our democracy in the context of what happened in the negative. It's a story that's very personal and very close to me, but it's also a story about resilience. And part of resilience is being able to find joy and happiness under harsh circumstances. And that's where the musical part comes in. We did have dances in the mess hall after dinner. The benches and tables were cleared away, and the teenagers had their dances. Our barrack happened to be right across from the mess hall. My mother had put my brother and my sister to bed, but we heard the music of the 40s wafting over the night air to our, and I relate very much to the big band sound, the sounds of the Andrews sisters. And so we worked that in as our musical. And we've also worked in Japanese folk tunes, melodies, because we had the leadership of the Japanese American community then was essentially in the immigrant generation. And we heard Japanese songs as well. But we're a Broadway musical, and so we also have big brassy showstopper numbers as well. It's a very important American story that we tell both entertainingly as well as enlighteningly and engagingly. And so I ask all of you, as Alan said, well, you're going to organize that, the theater party, and you're a great organizer, so I know you're going to, we'll be ready for you. And we'll have a nice talk-back session to discuss the issues there. So thank you all very much for all that you have been doing, what you will do, and thank you so much.
And monumental task tonight, and I couldn't be happier and I couldn't be more proud. I want to first start off by giving a saying that reminds me so much of Alan. And many of you may have heard it, but like how Chuck Schumer says at every inauguration, when he tells his story, if you've heard it, it's not for you. If you have, then it is. So I want to start off by saying with Alan, there's a saying that says, the reasonable man persists in adjusting himself to the world. The unreasonable man persists in adjusting the world to him. Therefore, all progress and change in the world depends upon the unreasonable man. And for all common practical purposes, I would say that Alan is that unreasonable man. He is just he's so strong, he's so passionate, he's like a runaway train, no brakes. Anybody that gets in his way is about to be run over. And so when he brought the clemency movement to me, at first, I was kind of thinking like, they've never done anything like this is not really going to happen. But slowly but surely, through his efforts, from going to the governor's home to having meetings with the governor, I started to see a change. And it's through this work, through this effort, and through his belief and passion, we are going to see some major efforts in the ways of clemency. Judith will come home, and she's going to be the symbol for so many others who are going to have that opportunity to come home. So I'm so proud of the work that you're doing. I'm so proud of everyone that has been a part of that movement. and together we will see that change. So I'm very proud of Alan. Let's give him a round of applause. And I just want to say, did everyone have a wonderful Thanksgiving? Yes. All right, we all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I did as well too. And I said before Thanksgiving, when Alan gave this to me, he said, wear something fabulous. And I said, okay, I'm going to wear something fabulous, right? But then after Thanksgiving, it looked a little different. So it's one of those things where it's a little bit, it looked a lot longer before Thanksgiving, but they say a woman's dress should be a lot like a speech. It should be long enough to cover the subject, but short enough to hold your interest. So and I want to thank the Greens for opening up their home. Yeah. Their home is fabulous.
You're making it very special.
Oh, well, thank you. And I was saying to Camille, I don't care who I was in a relationship with, if we lived here, it would be all right. Yeah. So, I'm very happy to be here. I always love coming here every single year, but I have been given the opportunity to present 2 royal women amongst the people with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Jim Owls Club. This is a remarkable opportunity, and we are in the midst of history right here. And I want to tell you a little bit about these dynamic women. I had a chance to read a little bit about them, but I grew up knowing them. For Melba, I was probably made or conceived off of your 1970s album that first came out, I Found Love. I see it in my parents' home. I know it was around that time, and I was born sometime in 1975, but everybody knows of your story. Everybody knows of the resilience of your life. Everybody knows about the Grammy Award nominations. Everybody knows about the Tony that you won, but everybody doesn't necessarily know about your story. You are a dynamic woman that has starred in Broadway shows from Hairspray to Ain't Misbehavin'. You've traveled internationally all over the world, but what I admire most about you is your resilience. And it is through your story and through your resilience that people all over the world are inspired to know that you have been raised up with extraordinary talent that runs through your DNA, but at the same time, because you have been elevated, your life is for public consumption and view. And through that, people can look at your life and how you continue to rise and continue to be strong. And you are that phenomenal woman that Maya Angelou speaks about, that you continue to rise, that so many young women, such as myself, are inspired by your story. And when you're in politics, you get knocked down pretty hard, pretty often, pretty fast. But it's through stories like you that we know that there is resilience and that you can always come back. And each time you come back stronger, better, more effective, more powerful, more inspirational than ever before. And I have to say, I mean, at 70, you look pretty damn hot. And next time I'm going to be wearing my sequins pants. So I want to say that we are so proud of you. We are so proud of your contributions, and you continue to be an inspiration to so many. And to my sister, to the Queen, to the one that we all admire, we are so proud of the contributions that you have made, not only to the music world, but to the world in general. You have that same DNA that is born and carries throughout your entire family. Many of you may not even know, but also they are the cousins to Leontine Price as well. So, you know, they just got the entertainment and music world cornered on all elements of the genre. But many may not know that you sung with Elvis Presley, that you sung with Bette Midler, that you sung with Aretha Franklin, and so many giants and careers that you have launched and set the stage for them to perform internationally. You have won Grammy Awards. You have been presented all over the world, have starred in films, written the score to so many films. And many people may look at you as you sit here today and wonder, as Bob Marley has said, many may not know how strong they are until they have to be. But as you sit there with your head held high and the strength that you embody, we all know that we too can embody that same strength. And the obstacles that God continues to put in our way and the challenges that are put before us, as they say, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, and you are living proof of that. You embody all of that. And so we are inspired by you. We love you, and many of you may not know, but both of these women, because when I met them, you know, I had to go backstage and get my backstage. That these women, I thought that they were just going to be catching up on things, but they were talking about history and many things that they had accomplished. And together, they are the founders of the McDonald Gospel Fest that many all over the world have taken credit for. But these dynamic women are the actual founders of that because they have strong Newark and New Jersey roots, even though my sister here is from Harlem and we're going to claim her in New York.
Yeah.
But I just want to let you know that the two of you, it's no coincidence that are joined here today for us to celebrate you from the Jim Owls Club. You are queens amongst the people, and we thank you for your leadership. We thank you for your strength and determination and your continued ability to inspire us, to continue to produce and continue to create music that inspires all of us and allows us to get through the challenging times in our own lives and careers. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we welcome and present these awards for Melba Moore.
Coming to this event. One, because Alan really knows how to get food.
That's
and
right.
There's some good stuff out there to eat. Stuff. Hi, George. How you doing? There's my publicist, George Austin. Right now, so I gotta make sure I say good things. George is the guy who makes sure I say the right things to the press, although he's not always successful about that. And I want to thank Denny and Denny's friend and what's his husband's name again? I want to thank Denny Friend for allowing us to be at her house. And her husband, Mark, something or other. Mark Friend, right. Now, I know Mark and Denny actually since the 1980s, so we go back a long time. We were just talking earlier about when they first moved here, and they wanted some space for entertainment. I think they succeeded in this magnificent room and for their generosity in sharing their home so many times on so many events. And of course, it was one of my great heroes on television. My wife and I, there's 3 shows on earth that my wife and I watch on television. Law and Order Special Victims, and Law and Order Criminal Intent. That's it. That's the only 3 we watch. And Blue Bloods. So who did we get to see last week on Blue Bloods? The great psychiatrist position that she played, Katie Irving. And now I get to talk about Jason. Now I'm going to tell you an interesting thing about Jason. I've known Jason for many, many years. Met his dad and mom tonight. His dad was telling me he was the UFT rep for Manhattan for many, many years. And his mom is the vice president of the UFT now. So Jason goes in a long line of educators. I have that same experience. Everybody in my family is an educator. Remember, everybody in my family is a woman. I sometimes walk in the bathroom and I want to make sure the sheet isn't up. I get suspicious already. So that's it. But I'm going to tell you a little bit before I do talk about Jason, about my wife. Because my wife's just now she's not one of these activists who runs around and do things, but she always does the right thing. My wife used to be a teacher here in New York City, was an assistant principal here and a principal here. About 14 years ago, she went out to principal heaven, Massapequa, Long Island. And she's been there that long. And this beginning of this year, she had an interesting experience. Parents came in and had their 10-year-old child with them, who had decided that this child was transgender. And it was a young lady who wanted to become a boy, a man's 10-year-old boy. And this was a unique experience not only for Massapequa, but for all of Long Island. There was just no rules. There was nothing at all in place for this. And many of the educators, including the superintendents and the people in that higher level, just wanted to ignore it. And my wife realized that, one, we can't ignore it because we're talking about someone's life in this circumstance. And 2, there had to be some set of rules that had to start. And I'm very proud to say that because of my wife, Massapequa, and probably the whole county of Nassau now has a set of rules on how to deal with transgender children. in miracles. I'm a little bit of a religious person. And Jason and I were in Puerto Rico recently, and we were talking. And I started telling him, and he was there with this magnificently attractive woman who he claims is his lady friend.
I know
his fiance. Is she your fiance yet? Did he give you
Yes!
Give him a ring?
Oh, your ring up.
Okay. And we're talking, and I start telling them, just about as I'm going to talk to a public official, whose name I will not mention, about how annoyed I was about something he did. And we began that discussion, and God was above us there, and we actually think we saved someone's job. So I want to congratulate Jason on his engagement, number one. And more importantly, on being the kind of person in Brooklyn, as a UFT rep, that has mattered, has made a difference. As young as he is, he's been someone who's made an impact on the educators of our borough. As young as he is, he's been someone who's given them good advice, strong commitment to what has to be done, and follows in the path that needs to be followed in terms of how the union and educators are both treated by the administrations and by the governor as well, and most importantly, on how they have a relationship with their borough office. It's a love fest there, and it's of course people like Jason who make that happen. Debbie helps a little bit too, but I know, Jason, we're so proud of you and what you did here. I saw Paul was here as well. We want to thank you all. So with that in mind, and with a great pleasure, I am proud to present this award to Jason Goldman, and a Human Rights Award. And I want you to know, Jason, they don't give this out lightly. So when they selected you, there was a good reason for it. And now that I got to meet your parents, I know what that reason is. They brought you up proud.
So, everyone in this room obviously knows Alan Roscoff. I met Alan probably a little over 10 years ago, and growing up in the southern tip of Staten Island, that's probably the most conservative area in New York City. So, I didn't necessarily know what transgender was when I was in junior high. I really didn't go to high school with that many people that were openly gay. I didn't really know of that many same-sex families. I really didn't talk to a lot of people that were in the LGBT community. But growing up in a labor household, growing up in a progressive family, I knew that was the right road to go down. And I knew that that was where my values stood. So, going into the political world of the UFT, you know, you come across many different folks, and I had the opportunity to meet Alan. Alan, you know, came across as a political club organizer and a political leader, and I, you know, being as young as I am, I was respectful of that. And, you know, we spoke, and I kind of agreed with everything he was saying for the most part. I thought, you know, I'm on board with gay marriage, that's fine. I'm on board with same-sex, I have no problem, doesn't affect me. And then all of a sudden, these issues started becoming mainstream in the media, these issues started becoming in the public eye, and Alan would call me and say, you know, I'm gonna, you know, yell at the governor about gay marriage not passing. I had a pretty good job, and I said, you should yell at the governor for not passing gay marriage. What's wrong with gay marriage? It's a fine thing. I didn't know that when Alan Roscoff calls and says he's gonna yell at the governor, he's gonna yell at the governor. And he's not gonna talk to some intermediary and, you know, send a carrier pigeon to the governor. It's gonna get to the governor. So as a young guy who's making a couple bucks, having a pretty good life, you know, doing better than most of my friends, I kind of then all of a sudden realized, wow, these are pretty serious issues. So, you know, over the years, Alan and I have come to have an affinity for one another and become very close. Camille, don't worry, my love for you is endless. But, you know, Alan kind of shed my light on a couple of things. One is, it's one thing to support issues, and it's one thing to be a part of progressive values. And it's another thing to really believe in them and to really strive to get things done. And Alan has kind of taught me the difference between being involved and being involved. So Alan, as I've grown and as I've learned and as I've kind of climbed my own professional career, I adore you and I love you. But I'll tell you this, When the Jim Owls Club is involved, there is more reading that has to go on to see where they stand on these issues, because you have no idea. Alan has a memory. Alan could tell you what Eric Adams did his first day in the Senate, what he's done last week, what votes he's missed in the Senate, what he's happy about on criminal justice. I mean, it's an incredible, incredible spectrum. Councilmember Fiddler's been out of office. I can't tell you. You could probably recite line and verse of things he said on gay marriage and on social justice issues. And for those of you who are still in office, God bless you for dealing with Alan. So when Alan said to me tonight that I was going to get this award, I humbly accepted, and I looked at the other honorees, and I felt like they really were pillars of the civil rights movement, and they were really pillars of the movement that I have identified with, but certainly not in the same level as others. And as Alan will remind everyone in the room, he's the co-author of the first ever gay rights bill in the entire country, and I think that that's something that we should all be certainly very proud of and celebrate. And as I accept this award and I move forward, I can tell you one thing. I can tell you this. I can say whatever I do professionally, wherever I go in my career, the values that Alan has taught me, the ability to stick to what you believe in, and this whole Candles for Clemency movement that he started. Alan, I'm with you in spirit. I mean, depending upon the week and the day and where the rally is, I may even attend, but it depends on my own professional career. But I will tell you this, I stand with you, I stand with the Jim Owls Club. This is a club, just last week I said to Alan, we had walked in the Gay Pride Parade several years ago. I did the whole walk, I couldn't believe it. Alan didn't stop talking from beginning to end. I learned more during that parade than I think I learned all throughout college. But I come forward. I know Corey, Councilmember Johnson, who's a close personal friend who I met through Alan many years ago, has taught me all different things about birth certificates that I didn't even know about. I just knew you needed birth certificates on Staten Island, you need birth certificates to play baseball in Little League. That's what you need it for. But Corey taught me the value of being able to self-identify on a birth certificate, and I think that these are the values and these are the important cultural things that you learn throughout life, and I think it's really a testament to the members of this club and the leadership of Alan, and I take this award with great humility, and I really appreciate it, and I thank everyone, and I hope to be continued part of this movement. Thank you.